A new BBC documentary that aired earlier this evening has thrown light on the shadowy forces that make up the civil service, in particular their repulsion for Brexit, the biggest democratic mandate in British history. So Simon MacDonald, he was the permanent Undersecretary at the Foreign Office, and he was full of boasts about banging the Ramona drum when he should have been meeting the highest standards of impartiality. Watch this.
The main feeling in the Foreign Office building was of mourning. People were in tears. People were in shock.
On this occasion, this solitary occasion, I decided to tell my colleagues, and therefore let ministers know, that I had voted to remain in the European Union. I felt that they would assume that in any case, so I decided to embrace it.
Now, this follows former Prime Minister Liz Truss condemning the left-wing orthodoxy that destroyed her premiership, which has been corroborated by the Daily Mail. So the paper has revealed that Cabinet Secretary Simon Case, Britain's most powerful civil servant, bounced Liz Truss into axing her cuts to corporation tax in the most vexatious manner possible by briefing that she had already made the decision to the press. For a time, ex-Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng was with Truss to dismantle the anti-growth coalition, and he joins me live now to share his experiences of going up against the Westminster blob. So, Kwasi, a series of extraordinary revelations over the weekend, but not surprising in some ways. We knew this, didn't we? So let's go through them. Let's talk first about what we saw from Simon MacDonald.
Sure.
So this is one of the most senior civil servants.
Well, he was the head of the Foreign Office
saying
at the time
that he was in mourning along with his staff the day after the Brexit referendum, and then he told them that he was a Remainer. I mean, what was going on?
So that's pretty crazy, because he not only told them that he voted Remain, but if you followed the interview, he said he told them to boost their morale. So they were all down because of what had happened. And he thought, as head of the department, that he would cheer them up by reminding them and telling them what they all knew, that he'd voted Remain. And we talk about the impartiality of the civil service, but that seems pretty extraordinary. And as you say, in the Brexit vote, something like 33 million people, it was 17 million, 16 million, roughly, which was the biggest democratic mandate in our country's history. He was of the side that lost, and he felt he had to tell his civil service colleagues that he'd voted Remain in order to boost their morale. So, I mean, anyone who suggests that they weren't biased or they weren't, wholeheartedly almost behind Remain, I think is wrong.
And then it comes to the machinations of your mini-budget. And look, you've admitted maybe you went
I think it was too much, too fast. I've always said that.
However, we cannot get away from the fact, Kwasi, that there was a campaign.
Oh, certainly.
There was a campaign by the blob to overturn virtually every decision that you made. And it comes to this extraordinary moment where Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary, effectively bounces the Prime Minister into reversing your corporation tax cut by telling her, oh, this has already been leaked to the media, so if you go against what I'm telling you, the markets will crash.
Right.
Did that happen?
So my memory of it was quite similar to that. So it wasn't a cut. It was that we wanted to stop the increase.
Yes.
We felt that the 19% was fair, and that if we went to 25%, we'd make the country a lot less attractive to invest. Which
is what Sunak had planned and has now
exactly.
done.
And she'd
was
been
reversing that cut.
She'd been very clear about that. She'd won the mandate. She'd won the leadership on that policy. And then essentially, as you say, there was market turbulence. I accept that. But when I was away in Washington, I felt that they were really getting at her. And I think in that kind of slightly insidious way, they were undermining my position. And she summoned me back. And I thought I was going to be summoned to front the U-turn, because we'd already done a U-turn on the 45p rate, getting rid of that. And she said, and this is where I agree with Liz up to a point, the blob worked against her to an extent. But then she freaked out and panicked. So I was called back, summoned to Downing Street, told that I was going to be dismissed. And I think she thought that would save her. Maybe people had told her, well, if you get rid of the Chancellor, you've got a chance to recover. And it was as clear as day to me that once I was out, she would have, I said 3 weeks. I said to her, as I'm speaking to you, I said, you've got 3 weeks. And in the end, I think it was 6 days. So she resigned 6 days after.
Yes, because they knew she was weak at that
That's
point.
right. That's exactly right.
They had
exactly
conquered her.
That's exactly right.
But what I really can't understand, Kwasi, is whether it's the role of Simon Case, an apparently impartial person, to tell the Prime Minister to get rid of a policy which, as you say, they have just been elected on a mandate from their party to enact.
So what they would say is that the markets had wobbled, there was enough international crisis. And actually what the interesting bit is the extent to which, and this is what I think Andrew Pierce was suggesting in his piece, the extent to which the IMF and other international bodies were in collusion with the Treasury.
Of course.
And they were all part of a sort of network.
Yeah, so it's the globalist economic orthodoxy coming to play.
There was an element of that. And I remember going to Washington and people saying, this is outrageous, this is wrong. And I just think we, at the centre in Whitehall, I think there was panic.
And then you have Sue Gray. So this is Sue Gray, Simon Case's deputy, again, a member of the civil service. We're told impartially, even though she was the witch hunter-in-chief against Boris Johnson. She has now joined the Labour Party as Deputy Starmer's Chief of Staff. Day one, Kwasi, day one, she goes and addresses the Labour staff members and she says, referring to her time in the Cabinet Office, "You had my back," she says. "I'll always have yours."
I don't know what that's going.
Was she ever impartial, this woman?
So look, I found it extraordinary. That of all the things that's happened with regard to the civil service, the fact that this lady, and she's very professional, well thought of, within the civil service.
Well, she was.
Well, the fact that she did the Boris, the inquiry, the Grey report, the inquiry into what happened, and then literally within, a few months, was then working in Keir Starmer's office and is now working there as the Chief of Staff. That seems pretty extraordinary.
Well, she was doing Starmer's bidding, well paid for by the public, wasn't she?
At what point did she stop being impartial and become part of Starmer's team?
So, Kwasi, when people like me say, look, the blob is taking over, this is a big threat to democracy in the UK, people like to say that I'm some sort of conspiracy theorist, but actually, this is a huge amount of evidence that we've just found from the last couple of days.
I think the Sue Gray situation to me was extraordinary because here was someone until last year who had a very senior role in the civil service, was judging Boris Johnson, was looking at the report, looking at that, and then all of a sudden she becomes...
The civil service want a Labour government, don't they? That's what this is about.
They're obviously pro-Remain. I think Sue Gray's transformation from top civil servant to head of Keir Starmer's staff. She's right at the centre of his operation.
Yeah.
And she's not the only Labour supporting.
No.
And she's come out as a Labour supporter. She's not made she hasn't hidden her allegiance.
Very worrying times. Kwasi Kwarteng,
Thank you.
former Chancellor, thank you so much.